Hello and welcome to another episode of Access to Experts. I'm Ann DeVere and I have a question for you. Did you know that when your bank says no, that's not the final answer? Well, some of us have to wait in line to find out what it is. We're banging our head against the wall, so to speak, trying to figure out how to get some money to grow our business. Well, wait no more, because my very special guest, Fred Sussman, specializes in financing, mergers and acquisitions, especially alternative debt and capital raising strategies. So, Fred, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks, Ann. It's my pleasure to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you here. As a business owner, I know that financing can be a little bit confusing or a lot confusing at times, depending on what we're dealing with, which aspect of our business. And I hear this over and over again. So I have some questions for you. I have some examples that I want you to share with us. So are you ready? We're going to roll up our sleeves and get in there and get inside your head and get some of that fabulous information that you have.
Well, I'm ready and willing and happy to speak with you and your audience, and hopefully they'll pick up some pointers that'll help them today.
Oh, I know they will, because I know what we're going to be talking about, and I'm really excited about that. So everybody get ready. I'm sure you want to grab a pen or, start typing somewhere. Ready, set. Okay. So Fred, before we get into all the fabulous information, how did you get to do what you do? What makes you so good at it? Because I know you're talking some big numbers here.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting, we'll start with the basics. I have a BS in business and an MBA in finance. I spent the first 8 years of my career in corporate America in the aerospace and tech industry.
Wow.
Was pretty successful, but then I hit that magical 30 years old.
Oh, no.
And it was like, okay, I always had the desire to get out on my own and build my own business and build value. So that, 30th year was kind of a big milestone. And so in that same year, not only did I turn 30, but, I quit my job, started a new business. And by the way, personally, we also bought a new house and moved and had our second child. So,
well, it's a busy year for you.
Yeah. But anyway, so we started that first business. It was an IT consulting firm. Started over a number of years, built that to about 200 employees, and sold that to a public company. And I stayed on with the public company after the sale as a corporate vice president in their mergers and acquisition group. And in a couple of years, bought and integrated about $700 million worth of companies. And then I left there and did it over again. And since then, I've done it 4 times. I've built and sold, financed and sold a total of 5 businesses in my career. A couple of them to public companies, and I've always stayed on with the acquirer after the sale in a key role, including being the CEO of a division of a public company. And now basically what I focus on, and with my team, is working with other business owners in maximizing the value of what they've built.
So that's why I'm excited about having you here, because you've been in every aspect of business. And so I want to actually go to the initial. When your bank says no, it doesn't mean no as far as I'm concerned, and you have proven that. So what does that mean exactly? If we want to grow our business, how do we get money when a bank says no? It's like there's so many different ways to raise money. And could you kind of give us an overview of what it is that we need to be looking at when it comes to getting some financing for our business?
Sure. And the key is for business owners not just to think bank. They have to really get out there and think about, who can I work with that truly understands the debt and capital markets has relationships in those industries, and knows how to apply those resources for a solution for that business. And so that's very key.
So why would a bank say no in the first place? So what are some of the things that they're looking at? Can you give us an example how all of this works?
Sure. So, so banks, at the end of the day are very regulated and have very stringent requirements that they have to adhere to in order to make loans. But, we have, there's all kinds of alternatives out there. There's specialty lenders that do asset-based lending and cash flow-based lending, purchase order financing, lease capital, all kinds of things that fall outside of the realm of the bank. And because they're not banks, well, yes, they do look at how they're going to get their money back, aren't subject to the same regulations that banks have to adhere to in order to make loans.
Mm-hmm.
So,
give us an example of a client you work with that maybe they went to the bank and the bank said no, and you were able to find alternative solutions for them.
Sure. So, well, we recently and are currently working with an LED lighting company. They make smart lights for cities and focus on municipalities to put in these LED lighting systems. They were growing. They're relatively small, about $3 million in revenue. And they were ultimately gaining a lot of traction because of some uniqueness of their product. And we're gaining lots of purchase orders that their line of credit from the bank wouldn't allow them to fulfill. And the banks basically were telling them no because they didn't have the receivables yet in order to borrow against to increase what the banks referred to as their borrowing base. And the owners themselves didn't have enough collateral to support significantly greater amounts of borrowing. So the bank basically couldn't get comfortable loaning them money. Okay. So what we were able to do was come in with some specialty lenders. We brought in a purchase order finance company. And basically that's an entity that will look at the purchase order and loan money against it so they could pay their expenses, and particularly their suppliers that were providing components to them that they needed to put together. And then we also brought in a credit line finance company, a factor, if you will, that immediately upon invoicing of the end client would loan against it, providing additional working capital for the business to continue fulfilling the next orders. And both of those lenders have provided virtually unlimited credit lines now to this company. And the end result is that in 2018, their projected sales are going to exceed $20 million. And of course, their profitability is growing along with that. So it's quite a success story by thinking beyond the bank.
Well, it definitely is. From 3 million to 20 million. That's quite a growth, and I can see why a bank, I understand why they would say no, just following a traditional way. And that's what I really kind of struck me when we were talking about different types of lending, is that being able to look at the business, the different aspects of the business, and then finding different lenders. So it's not just going to one bank; it's looking at different lenders for the same business. So maybe you get 5 million here, 10 million there, and it adds up to whatever you need. So it's very creative. That's creative, way of putting things together. And that's why you're good at it, because of all the different things you've already done in the past, different aspects of business. So now let's switch over. Now, sure. One of the things that comes up quite a bit, in business consulting, people say, well, what's your exit strategy? Well, what do you want to do? When are you going to sell? Are you going to sell a business? Are you going to leave it to family? All these questions come up. And most business owners that I work with, they would love to be able to sell the business. Now, this opens up a whole another perspective on how to structure the business. Let's talk about that. So what should we know when it comes to setting ourselves up to sell the business?
Okay, well, So one of the things I always tell folks is when you're going to get ready to sell your business, make sure that you know what you're looking for to get out of the business, and make sure you understand who's going to represent you in that type of transaction. It's very key. This is a very personal thing. It's your most valuable asset. And you want somebody who's going to represent you and safeguard you and achieve your objectives with it.
Yeah.
And so it's very important to not just refer to the yellow pages and find someone, but ultimately seek referrals, and don't just stop at the referrals. You need to really understand the firm you're talking to. Are they an M&A firm that's going to represent your interest? Or are they a broker that is looking for listings and hoping to see a buyer come forward?
Okay.
And then once you've found that firm, it's very important to make sure that that firm is a fit for you. And what I mean by that, the only way to learn that is to actually meet and talk with the firm. Now, the meeting doesn't have to be in person. It can certainly be over the phone or over a Skype meeting or things like that. But you need to understand the firm, and you need to understand specifically the team that's going to work on the transaction. Can they relate to you? Do you relate to them? Do they understand your industry? And quite honestly, is the firm the type of firm you're looking for? Is your business big enough for them from a revenue and profitability size so that they'll focus on you and pay attention? And quite honestly, and that relates to how much they think they can sell your firm for.
Wow, great points that you made for us to be looking at. And one thing kind of jumped out at me. So when we're interviewing a firm, it may or may not be the person that's representing us. So it could be somebody representing the firm, but the person who's actually representing us could be a different person or different team. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, you really
That's
need
pretty
to.
scary. That is, because like you said, that's our most precious asset, financially, anyways, where we're trusting somebody to take care of. So if it's a personal connection when we're talking with somebody, but then turn around and have somebody else represent us. I could see the disconnect in that. Can you give us an example of how do you work with people? What is it that you look for?
Yeah. So we look for, we're very, very selective about who we work with. We truly make sure we're totally 100% aligned with our clients. And by that, I mean, we align our incentives entirely with the client, because at the end of the day, we don't charge a monthly retainer for working with clients. We work solely on a success fee. So if we're not successful completing the transaction, my partners and I don't get paid.
Wow.
So
that's incentive to work hard for us, isn't it? Yeah.
Well,
my goodness.
Again, it's that total alignment. We want to be totally on the same page. So we spend a lot of time getting to know the client, having them get to know us, and we want to make sure that we can deliver, and that's very, very important to us, as it is to our clients. Yeah. And so then we take it a step further. Once we've engaged and we've agreed to engage with a client, we roll up our sleeves and dig deep into that client. We look underneath the covers. We try and find anything that's going to negatively impact that transaction. And if we find things, we bring them to the client's attention and then work closely with their advisors, their accountants, their attorneys, whoever is relevant, to clean those things up. Because at the end of the day, if a prospective buyer finds those things during their due diligence process, they're going to ask for a cut in the price, or they're going to walk away from the transaction. Wow. So we had that off at the pass. And then
preparation is key, I guess, as always with anything. So especially in this case, looking at everything ahead of time. Yeah. So I'm sorry I cut you off, but I just want to make sure that prepare everybody, make sure we're looking at every aspect of it from the perspective of the buyer, because they want to make sure they're getting the best deal. So no surprises at the negotiating table. Definitely
Right.
not. We don't want that.
Right.
Okay.
So now, so once we were there, once we've got all that straightened out, that's when we really start. Now, while we've been working on that, we've been identifying the potential buyers, which are both strategic and financial buyers.
Mm-hmm.
And a strategic buyer is typically someone who's looking to add to their business to increase their revenue or earnings. A financial buyer is typically a private equity firm or some other kind of money buyer that's just looking for an investment. So we've identified that. We put together marketing materials on the firm. We go out, we collect back in, and ultimately identify the finalists and run an auction to get the greatest price for our client.
Okay.
And then we work through the diligence process with the buyer, and ultimately, work hand in hand with our client, representing them all the way through the negotiation process and getting them to the sale.
Hmm.
So it's really very powerful. I mean, just for an example, we recently worked with a consulting firm. It was about $10 million in revenue and $2.5 million worth of earnings. And what we were able to do for them, and going through the process, is we found a financial buyer for them who bought 75% of their firm and wanted to, bought into and believed that the owners could build it and grow it significantly more with their help and their finances. So they retained that group, left 25% of the equity in their hands, and are really, now those owners are set to have another exit in a projected 5 years for another cash out of their business.
Okay, so it's not all or nothing. There are all different kinds of ways of selling your business too. So you're bringing all these really great ideas and new perspectives or different perspectives on whether it's growing our business, financing it to grow our business, or setting it up to actually exit, our exit strategy. So it could be either just one time, or it could be, I guess, over staggered out over years. And the points that you brought up, I think they're just really, really important for our viewers to take into consideration. So we want to make sure we choose a firm that's the right size for us, and they understand us, they care, they're going to take the time to look at every aspect of the business, so there are no surprises at the negotiating table. And so there are always alternatives. So, and I think that's the most important thing we just want to take out of here. It's not one size fits all. It's let's take a look at what there is. Because each one of us is unique, and our business is unique. So, and I love the way you make it so, personal, if you will. Business is personal because it's ours. But the way you're taking time to look at every aspect of the business and a business owner and, all of it. So definitely. And I know that you have a gift for our viewers, don't you?
Yes, I have a white paper, which basically goes into and explains all the elements of alternative financing. They can get that at our website at www.visionarycg.com.
Or you can take a look at the link below the video, and it will take you right to it. And definitely want to download it and look further into it, and definitely get in touch with Fred and his team to support you. And it's I know that I will be doing that for sure. Just getting ready to sell a business, you don't want to start at the end. You want to prepare for it as well. So let's look into it. Let's get that white paper and plan, because preparation is a big part of it. So Fred, is there anything else that you want to share with our viewers before we wrap up our fabulous interview here?
Well, I guess what I'd like to share is just one other tip for our viewers, if we could.
Please, let's go.
Their business. A lot of times, people, if they're selling some sort of capital equipment or expensive piece of equipment or service, you know, the challenge is a lot of times is financing, and it's a lot easier to sell the payment than it is to sell a large number. So I advocate that every business have a lease financing program. And, you know, a lot of people will say, well, I tried to set that up with my bank and it just was a hindrance to the sales process. You know, because again, banks have regulations, they have a long underwriting process, and they're not supportive of the sales process. So what we've been able to do through a number of our sources is arrange lease financing for the companies, and we have entire programs we put together for them. And by the way, contrary to a bank, programs that we've been able to arrange are not just for the best credit customers, you know, the A credits. We have people who, you know, organizations that will finance, you know, the B, C, and D level customers, which really opens up and supports the sales process, and, you know, doesn't frustrate the salesman. And you know, for example, you know, the best example I have is a equipment distributor that we work with, who basically has grown their sales to over $100 million a year annually because of leasing programs that were put in place. So, you know, don't look at leasing strictly as something if I need to acquire equipment for myself. Look at it as a tool to build your sales and build your revenue and ultimately your profits.
Very interesting. So that's yet another alternative to traditional bank financing. So you have given us a lot of insight and a lot of great information for us to actually take a look at. And I expect that a lot of our viewers are going to be looking at their numbers as soon as they're finished watching this interview and downloading that white paper, because all of a sudden you just created some possibilities for us that maybe some of us didn't even know existed, and I thank you for that. You know, I see the importance of it, and I'm thrilled to be bringing this information to our viewers. And thank you so much, Fred Sussman, for joining us today and sharing your insights and your expertise with our viewers.
Yeah. And thank you, Anna. It's been my pleasure. And hope to do it again sometime.
Oh, definitely. Well, we have a lot more to share, so we will be having you back again. And yes, everybody, Fred will be joining us again soon with more financial advice for you. Okay, so be sure to download the white paper and get started and send us your questions, okay? We want to make sure we're asking the right questions next time, all the questions that you most want the answers to. I'm Ann DeVere, and this has been another episode of Access to Experts. See you next time.